everybody. Welcome back to Mining Stock Daily. We got a corporate update here from the Casino Copper Gold Project and Western Copper and Gold up in Yukon with CEO Mr. Paul Wessels, longtime guest of the podcast. They do trade on the TSX and the NYSE American with the symbol WRN. They've been a long-time sponsor and partner of the podcast. Paul, welcome back. How you been?
Very good. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Trevor. We always seem to get into some good conversations. But yeah, I'm doing well. You know, it's just about officially summer, I guess. Well, I guess it's officially summer on the 21st of June. So we're officially summer. And it's pretty nice up here in Vancouver. It's very nice up in Whitehorse. I'm headed up next week up to site. So I'm excited about that as well.
I assume exploration season is just bustling up in Yukon right now.
Yeah, no, it's you can explore year round, but the reality is that if the most cost effective exploration, of course, is when you don't have snow on the ground, and that is from May, June to September, October. So I mean, we've been up at site, but really just getting everything prepped, and then the drills start turning here shortly. Not much exploration this year, really more on geotech, a bunch of activities really on the drive on permitting. And, the goal is to get our application back into YESA, their Environmental Assessment Authority up in the Yukon next year. Things are looking really good. Things are firing on all cylinders on that. And so that's really the emphasis here this year. But there's probably a few holes that we'll do at the end, just to look at, some of the work that's coming out of our relationship with our strategic partners.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those strategic partners. The last time you and I chatted was shortly after Mitsubishi, I believe Mitsubishi Materials, that entity came in as a strategic partner. So we've got that covered, but what happened following, which we didn't chat about since then, is that your ongoing work with Rio Tinto as a strategic partner and investor, they re-upped following the Mitsubishi news. So obviously, very, very good news for your shareholders and for the company to continue the work. But really, let's kind of get a sense of really what this means. What, with that upping of their position, what does Rio Tinto continue to bring to the table here for Casino?
Yeah, I mean, it's, to be honest, it's a perfect two strategic partners, and maybe I'll just unwind them. I mean, of course, with Rio Tinto, this is the second largest mining company in the world, big player in the copper space. They came in, and we've talked about this before on your show, they came in May 2021 with the explicit, idea here to come in, do some work, together, which we're now complete. Take a look at it, which is what they're in the middle of right now, and then decide on is it a future investment, is it a future deal, is it buying the project outright? We'll see where those things end up. But on the back of the investment by Mitsubishi, which we'll talk about here shortly, they had the right, it's called a participation right, to maintain their essentially 8% shareholding. They enacted that. So they invested, a little under, it ended up being around 2.3 million Canadian. And that was in, end of March. So, I mean, still happy, still working closely with them. I mean, I think that, we'll see where that all goes, but pretty positive. I mean, we're part of this summer's plan is to bring up lots of people, and we'll be bringing up Mitsubishi and Rio and as well. Mitsubishi is I'm really excited about Mitsubishi for two reasons. First of all, the same way with Rio came in and they said, look, there's some things that we want to do, and it was very good for the project. It was very good because we worked very closely with them on, there was a MET program, there was some resource delineation work that we did with Rio Tinto, and they brought, not only did they bring money, but they brought this whole technical team in and really, refined what we were doing, and that was really good. We're now doing that again with Mitsubishi. And so they bring, a pretty good technical team. And it's interesting, most of the people that I'm dealing with on with Mitsubishi are the group that was really active with Copper Mountain, the Copper Mountain mine here in British Columbia. So they know copper gold mining. They know copper gold mining in Western Canada. They and these are real boots on the ground sort of guys. So been really enjoyed sort of working with them. And now it's the three of us. So it's actually,
Yeah.
so we have these technical committee meetings, and it's ourselves, and it's Mitsubishi, and it's Rio Tinto, and they're bringing in their technical teams and our technical teams. And so, yeah, we're really, I mean, it's refining around the edges, but it's, we're ending up with a really good project, and everybody is really excited about that, moving it forward. And then, from taking a step back, and where's this going to all end up? Of course, we've got this expiry of our agreement with Rio Tinto on November 28th. So we have to replace that with something. And then even the Mitsubishi deal, I mean, that's a 2-year deal. So it's a come in, work closely together, and then decide what's next. So making sure that we've got some big milestones here coming up on those fronts as well.
It's like the mining version of the old sitcom Three's Company. Remember that one?
I do, which is
John
dating
Ritter.
myself.
Yeah, mine. Me too. Me too. Uh, I guess maybe I don't know who's John Ritter in this, but let's talk about what is the conversation between Rio Tinto and Mitsubishi. Are they having conversations with one another along with obviously Western?
Yeah, they are. I mean, and that I've been informed of that. I know that, like, right after we made the announcement that Mitsubishi was a strategic investor, I talked to Rio, and they were very happy to see Mitsubishi. And why I like Mitsubishi is they're the partner of choice, and so having them as the partner of choice, I mean, it it will be great if this is a Mitsubishi, Rio Tinto, sort of, and we end up with a bid from them or an agreement with them. But even if Rio sort of stays on the sidelines, having Mitsubishi there as a partner of choice opens up the door. And this is an important thing to recognize. It really opens up the door to a number of other parties. And so maybe some of these other parties are like, wow, geez, this is, Casino, love it. 21 million ounces of gold, 11 billion pounds of copper. I'd love to get my hands on that.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's a big capital cost project. So with Mitsubishi there, like, oh, okay, well, I could partner with Mitsubishi and bring this project forward. It opens the door to additional opportunities. So on the back of this deal with Mitsubishi, we've gone back with our advisors to all those doors we knocked on, and said, that's changed here a little bit in terms of the dynamics. So, where are you guys at? And maybe it's time to come back in and you had an initial look, have a deeper look. But
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's an exciting time for us because there's all that going on. But I mean, the other thing that's going on is that the project itself, I mean, there's a reason why all these guys are investing, is because there's not a lot of good copper projects, and there's not a lot of good copper projects that are very, very close to, that have the clear path really to production, which is what we have. And so, I mean, we're sitting there and we're driving towards permitting. We're driving towards, getting this thing essentially shovel ready. And, we're somewhat uniquely in this market, pretty well funded for that as well. And so,
Yeah.
It's great with Mitsubishi and Rio, and certainly think something's going to happen there, but we're pretty excited about just driving this project forward and with the future of copper looking very positive.
Paul, I do want to make one clarification here just for people listening, because there might be a little bit of some confusion regarding Mitsubishi. There was news out of a peer company of yours, that's Miramaka Copper. They also announced a strategic investment with Mitsubishi Corp. Your deal is with Mitsubishi Materials. I'm not an expert on how that corporation is all managed and broken up, but it is two different entities. So I just think it's worth mentioning real quick for everybody, so we kind of put that to bed. And if anybody wants to dive into how those are set up. Like, be my guest. We're not gonna jump into that bucket right now. But it is interesting because, and I say that because last week on this podcast, in the long form, I talked to Gavin Went out of Australia, and we talked about this, and I called it a bifurcation within the metals and mining industry, where the major producers right now are making moves to set themselves up nicely for the next 20, 30, 40 years, if not longer. But on the riskier side, on the exploration side of the mining sector, people are really struggling to even last another 30 to 40 days. Capital's hard to come by, money's really tight. The risk is just not quite there right now. And I think this is appropriate to bring up with you because the casino project with these strategic investors are set up very nicely. You are cashed up. You're doing the work you need to do, working towards permitting. We'll see what happens from these investors pretty dang soon. We'll get more updates. But at the same time, Paul, I've known you for a number of years where you've been in those shoes before, where risk capital just isn't there. In fact, the first time you and I started working together, I remember vividly Western WRN on the TSX was trading about, or excuse me, on the NYSE was trading about 35 cents a share. So, and I remember, that we've had discussions about this. So you've been there, and I'm just kind of curious, I don't know if it's advice I'm looking for or kind of what you're seeing from the market, but like you see what's happening in the junior exploration development right now, but you're also a part of somewhat the latter part where you're well cashed and you have good strategic investors and people are very much interested in where casino goes. That's not a question. I guess that's more of a comment, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I can give you my thoughts. Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember those days. They were well, I mean, calling them tough days. I mean, obviously they're you have to be more creative in than when you have lots of money in your pocket. But I think what's important is that you have to have a laser focus on the shareholder, like you really do, and sometimes you forget that, and you're an exploration company, and I got to keep drilling. I'll just do whatever it takes to drill. And because if I just get news flow out there, then it'll be great. And what you find in these markets, and you'll see this, I'm not sure if this came up when you were talking last week, but you'll see a company release great results, and it becomes a liquidity event, right? So it's just, a bunch of shares trade. And people say, well, I thought my share price would go up. And then it's like, no. It just created a bunch of volume and a bunch of people got out.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, we're in a somewhat enviable position. I mean, we started Q2 with $43 million. I mean, we closed, Mitsubishi plus Rio Tinto together, almost brought us up to $25 million with the top up that came from Rio. So, and that was on top of, almost $20 million that we had in the bank already. So started Q2 with 43, well positioned here moving forward. And the other thing is that having Rio and Mitsubishi there obviously provides a bit of a backstop. They're not going to let us slow things down to absolutely nothing. They want to see things move forward. And like I said, I mean, this isn't even a conversation that we're going to have for a little while. But it's a tough market. I mean, it's interesting you brought up the majors. And I mean, I cannot in the history, which is, over a decade plus, really following this, I cannot remember so much M&A in the base metal space, right? I mean, you look at, just even going back and you look at, BHP, Oz Minerals, you've got obviously Teck and Glencore, you've got Copper Mountain and Hudbay, you've got, now you're hearing the rumor last week was on Barrick and First Quantum. Like really every major copper producer seems to be in play some way or another way, right? So that's always a good sign because it starts there, right? It starts with the majors, and then there's all this sort of repositioning, and then they start to take one step down and they go, okay, well, I missed the bid for whomever. How am I going to line up my copper production over the next 2 decades? And they look at companies like us. This is why we're seeing the investments that we've seen, and it's so it's an exciting space to be in right now. And on the gold side, I mean, I'm much more of your listeners probably know, I'm much more of a copper bull than a gold bull. And I mean, I think that the base metal companies right now are doing well, and most of them have been able to find money. The golds are a bit challenged, but I mean that's just really the nature of what's happening in the U.S. with the interest rates and Fed rates. I mean, no one knows where they're going to go, so no one knows where gold's going to go because they move in lockstep with each other, right?
Paul, let me ask you a real quick last question regarding Yukon. Yukon's now without a copper mine. The Minto mine has shut down, and we don't need to. I don't want to go in and hash out exactly what happened, but I'm just kind of curious if that is once again a little bit of an eyesore for the territory. Did that provide any challenges for the casino project as hopefully potentially the next and it possibly the only copper developer down the road in Yukon?
Yeah, I mean it provides a general industry challenge. I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily specific to copper, but it's a general industry challenge. And I'm a member of a number of groups up in the Yukon, mining groups, and we're really taking this seriously, and we're working very, very closely actually with the Yukon government, because that, I mean, like you said, we're not going to get into all the little bits and pieces of that, but there's the belief, and I haven't done the diligence, but I think this is true, that there's potentially still a mine there. And so it's a bit of the government has control over it right now. They're making sure that there's no environmental damage, which there won't be, and there isn't. I mean, so that's well covered off. There's no sort of risk to the environment from this. But the question really is what's next for that Minto property, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next year here plus to sort of see someone step in and turn that in, bring that forward, because I mean copper is relatively strong, and the future of it looks really, really good. But yeah, I mean it's as a blight on the industry, it's another mining company going bankrupt and basically handing the keys to the government, and it's not a good look. The advantage this time is that there is a pretty good reclamation bond in place, so it's not as bad as some of these issues in the past where it was an environmental disaster and no reclamation bond. That isn't the case here. It's sort of, from that perspective, been handled pretty well.
All right, Paul, let's leave it at that, because you and I will probably touch base here again later this summer, and there should be some news out of Western. I mean, leading into this fall when another important decision is supposed to be made by Rio Tinto. That was that's within the fine print of that agreement. So it's going to be an interesting 2023, and I'm sure you're happy that you're on I guess the the better side of these very volatile bear markets. So congratulations on that, and we'll talk to you again down the road here.
All right, perfect. Always a pleasure, Trevor.
Yep. All right, everybody, that's your update from Western Copper and Gold, again trading on the NYSE American and the TSX with WRN.